Welcome to Season 7 of Open Forum in the Villages, Florida. In this show, we talk to leaders of clubs and interesting folks who live in and around the villages. We also talk to people who have information vital to seniors. You will get perspectives of what is happening in the Villages, Florida area. We are a listener-supported podcast. There will be shout-outs for supporters.
This is Mike Roth on Open Forum in the Villages, Florida. I haven't done one of these solo episodes in a long time, so I thought I'd put together a episode that I'm calling A Tale of Two Ships and a Plane. Recently, I came back from a wonderful vacation, and I'm going to take it apart piece by piece. But the first part of the trip was on Air Canada from Orlando to Montreal, and then Montreal on to Barcelona. Now, on Air Canada, I had booked business class the whole way to make sure I got a sleeper seat on the transocean portion of the flight. The trip from Orlando to Montreal was wonderful. Not a problem. We get to Montreal and there's a little bit of a delay, but Air Canada had 3 lounges for their business class customers. The first lounge was a standard airport lounge. The second lounge offered some food and beverages. Third lounge was a first-class restaurant. It had entrees. You could order off a menu. The food was first class. Service was first class. There were beverages. It was really quite a wonderful experience. And there was no charge. So we really enjoyed it. And then the flight on Air Canada delivered another perfect flight. The food was great. The cabin attendants were great. Even the sleeper seats were comfortable. And so we got to Barcelona in really good shape. So I want to give my congratulations to Air Canada, and they'll probably be my first choice for international air travel for a long time to come. So we get to Barcelona, and we're going to spend a few days to get used to the time zone and visit a few of the sites. I had visited Barcelona about 20 years ago and really enjoyed Las Ramblas. So we went out of our way to pick a hotel right on Las Ramblas, because 20 years ago, it was a bustling street. It was about 5 lanes of traffic wide that they reduced to 1 lane of traffic in each direction. And in the center island that they built, they had little booths or concessions, restaurants, places that sold flowers and birds and costume characters. It was a real hopping place. So we were anxious to get back there, and we liked tapas. So we booked the hotel. The hotel itself that we booked was very nice. It was like English translation, Royale. And although the rooms weren't royal, it was very nice. They had a great breakfast, which we included in the price of the hotel. We booked it through something called Princess Promotions, which is something that Princess sold us on their last cruise. And they said Princess Promotion pays everything except for a few dollars in taxes. It turned out that the few dollars in taxes was a lot more than that, almost so that I wouldn't buy another Princess Promotions again. And then we still have 5 days left. So we spent 2 days in Barcelona. Unfortunately, Las Ramblas was under total reconstruction. So almost all of the vendor booths that I loved were gone. The street itself was torn up and being repaired brick by brick. So we enjoyed Barcelona. We saw a few sites. We went to a house that Gaudi completely redid, and it was a wonderful experience. It was a short walk from the hotel, but the experiences that we expected to have on Las Ramblas never happened. On the second day, we asked the concierge at the hotel what the best tapas place was, and he gave us the name of a place that was around the corner on a very narrow street. It was like I thought a local bar, but the food in there was absolutely fantastic. So we enjoyed that. And the reason we picked this particular Princess cruise out of Barcelona was that it was the maiden voyage of a brand new ship, about a 4,000 passenger ship called the Princess Star, which was the sister ship to the Princess Sun, which we had gone on last December and really enjoyed. And we had our hopes high. We were a little bit worried about being on a maiden voyage because things can go wrong and maybe the ship won't even sail. But the ship did sail. The check-in process was flawless. Princess sent us our medallions, and we had the sanctuary class. And so the medallion came with a letter that said, when you get to the terminal, that you need to go in the green lane. Okay. So we get to the terminal. There's a little bit of a line, 5 or 10 people. We get to the green lane. There are fewer people. And we get rushed through that real fast. We hardly had a chance to stop. We stopped at a check-in desk. They checked our passports and boarding passes, and lo and behold, we're walking on the ship. I think the whole thing was less than 20 minutes. So it was really a fast boarding process and very trouble-free. The ship was almost a mirror copy of the ship we had been on in December, but it was better in several respects. And the stateroom that we had was very nice. We had a balcony in the sanctuary class so that on the ship, naturally we could eat in any of the restaurants or the specialty restaurants, but there was a special restaurant just for sanctuary guests that probably held 50 tables, and it was a very nice restaurant. I don't think we had a dinner in the main dining room. We did have a couple of breakfasts there because the sanctuary wasn't open that early. We were very happy with the service and the food in the sanctuary restaurant and the specialty restaurants that we ate in. The overall dining experience, even in the food court, and I forget the name that they use on it, was excellent. We went to many ports. I'll talk about a few of them. The first port we went to was Marseille. We had never been to Marseille, and we get to Marseille, and they tell us the ship is so big we have to dock at the freight terminal, container port, and we get off the ship and they put us on a bus to go for about 4 miles to get to the end of the dock. So we take the bus ride. We're driving along the bus ride about halfway, and we're looking out at the scene in the port, and there's a Norwegian ship in dry dock. We didn't realize it was dry dock at first. There were just a lot of cranes all over it. And then we look up at it, and we see, gee, it's the Norwegian Jewel. That's the ship we're supposed to take in about 2 weeks to come back to America. And we didn't think anything of it. We figured it was just really in the port, letting off passengers on another cruise. When we come back, after we had visited a few places in Marseille, we didn't get far out of the port. I'll go over that experience in a minute. But on the way back, we took a closer look at the ship, this Norwegian Jewel that we were going to be on, and there were no lifeboats on the ship. All the lifeboats were on the ground. Apparently, they have to be replaced every 20 years. So when we get back to the ship, I grabbed my phone and sent a text message over to my travel agent who'd booked us on the Norwegian Jewel, and I said, hey, is this ship going to actually be ready on the 15th of October when we're ready to come back to the States? And he said, oh, yeah, no problem. Luckily, he was right. The ship was ready. The part about no problem was a little bit of an overstatement. Anyway, so we're in Marseille, and the bus drops us off at the port, and there's a little, I'm going to call it a tourist area, but there's an old church. So the first thing we do is we walk up about 50 steps to go through this old Catholic basilica. It was beautiful. It was under construction. It was free. I couldn't complain about that. We got through that in 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. And then we walked down into this tourist area, and they had a museum of illusions. It would have been interesting because I had gone through one about a year ago in Orlando on International Drive. And I like optical illusions and stuff. Anyway, it was closed. So we go further down, and there's another very strange-shaped museum with a little man-made lake in front of it, a waterway, with a strange boat. And we go over there, and we say to the lady at the ticket counter, what kind of exhibit is this? And she says, oh, it's newly discovered cave drawings from prehistoric times. And I go, what? I never heard of it. And we go in, we pay for it, and they put you in a little 4-person, I'm going to call it a boat or a cart. And it was like a Disney ride because they put you into this cart and they take you down into the caves that were discovered and explored in the 1990s. They reproduced the caves on the interior walls, and you could see reproductions of these cave drawings that were 10 or 15,000 years old. And there was animals and horses and all kinds of things. It was terribly interesting. And so after you get out of the little boat, they show you the typical tourist film. And then you're in a museum, okay? And the museum is displaying animals that I had never seen before, because these are the way the animals would have looked based on the skeletons that they found. And we found that museum to be terribly interesting. We probably spent an hour and a half there, worth the time and money. The little boat that we saw was a reproduction of the diving boat that the guy who found the cave drawings used, and he accidentally found these cave drawings. So he was a scuba diver using scuba equipment because it was an underwater cave. You had to go into the cave. It was filled with water. And then you came up, you were in the middle of I'm going to call it a lake inside the cave because of the tides, because it was a tidal cave. And he started seeing these drawings. And some of them were really quite amazing. They had a whole series, an area where these prehistoric men had put their hands on the wall or the ceiling of the cave and blown smoke at their hand. And so when they removed their hand, you see an outline of their hand. It was really quite interesting to see what these prehistoric men had done in these cave drawings. I never thought I'd see, I'm going to call it real or as close to real cave drawings as you could ever see, because I'm never going down in the real caves. But this little ride, it wasn't exactly little, it was probably a 20-minute ride depicted, was quite unusual. So that was our time in Marseille. I don't think it was the next stop, but the next stop I'll talk about was Rome. Now, we had been to Rome a few years ago, and we loved Rome. A little crowded, but the bus ride from the pier to Rome was between an hour and a half and 2.5 hours, depending on traffic. And so we decided we wouldn't go on a tour of Rome or any of the things that we've already seen. Instead, we decided to take a rural tour, and we went to an olive farm where they grow olives. And we watched them harvesting some olives, and then we had some wonderful olive-based snacks, tasted their olive oil. We actually came home with a couple of bottles of olive oil. Very good stuff. We learned how it's made. I actually tasted an olive right off the tree that there were.
Let's take a quick break.
Have you heard about Mature Adults with Donna Hoover and Mike Roth? Yes, this is my second podcast, and Donna and I are going to be addressing subjects which are significant for seniors, especially seniors living here in the villages. The easiest way to hear the show is to look it up on Apple Podcasts. Look for Mature Adults with Donna and Mike. We'll be looking for you there. You can also find us on Mature Adults with Donna and Mike, all spelled out, @buzzsprout.com. Harvesting, and I'm telling you, it was so bitter. I spit the thing out. It was a terrible taste, but the real olive oil didn't taste anything like the olives off the tree. We visited Naples. We did not go to Pompeii again because we had been to Pompeii. We stopped in Sicily at Palermo, which was the low point of the cruise. I didn't know very much about Palermo. So we decided to take one of the ship-provided tours. Most of the tour was a waste of time. So we walked around the port of Palermo. To say it was crowded and dirty is an understatement, but it was both of those. There were 2 ships in the port, a Casa Line ship and the Princess Sun. And so we walked back to the cruise ship terminal to get on the boat. And we encountered a tremendous line of probably 1,000 people. And they pushed us all together like a Disney zigzag line. And people were coughing and sneezing and pushed together. Passengers from both ships, the Costa and the Princess ship. Princess only had one person checking your medallion to go back on the ship. So that slowed things down a lot. And the Italians in Sicily took everyone with a Costa card and put them in another line so they can go in express. So we were stuck in line for about 45 minutes. We did not enjoy that. So I would say in Sicily, we were sorry we got off the ship. That's the bottom line for that port. And then from Sicily, we cruised over to the port of Gibraltar. And I don't think there was another cruise ship in town in Gibraltar the day we were there. But it's an English independent area in the tip of Spain. Very clean, very well organized, enough of bus tours. So we took a taxi tour of Gibraltar. We saw the high points. One of the high points was visiting with the apes. There are monkeys that roam free in the park there, and you can get close to them. You're not supposed to feed them. One of the cab drivers did, and the monkeys were very cooperative. That was an interesting thing. And then they had nice shopping centers, shopping area, restaurants, and from downtown Gibraltar, we walked back to the ship. It was about 20 minutes all uphill. So we get back to Barcelona on October 15th. We have to change ships to go on the dock, and it was a long 2 or 3 miles along the dock at Barcelona to get from one ship to the other. So we decided to take a cab, and we get to the cab line, and it's 100 people long. And if you know me, you know I don't have much patience. So I see a cab driver out of line, just looking at his phone, talking. And so I walked over to him and said, "Hey, you want to take us over to the other pier?" And we jumped in his cab. So we bumped a lot of the line. That was good. So we get over and the Norwegian was very careful about telling everyone what time to show up. On our boarding paperwork, it said be there at 10:30. So we got there at 9:45 with this taxi cab. And there was a long line, disorganized long line of people trying to get rid of baggage. That included us. And then go in to check in. It probably took us 45 minutes to an hour to check bags and get in front of the Norwegian people to check in and pick up a room key card. And after we did that, we got to get in another long line and it wasn't quite as long, to check our passports. And they put a stamp in there that said Barcelona. So we finally get the opportunity to go on the Norwegian Jewel. We get on the Jewel. We check our room. Naturally, our luggage hasn't made it to the room. So we go to the restaurant called O'Malley's, and I ordered a Reuben sandwich. It's supposed to be a little bit of cheese, corned beef, and sauerkraut. So we're munching on the sandwiches, and this guy comes by named VJ from India, and he says, "Everything okay?" And we said, "No, we're very apprehensive about getting our reservations for the specialty restaurants. We had wanted to make 5 reservations, and we can only make one of them online because every specialty restaurant on the ship only had 8 p.m. reservations, and we wanted 5 p.m. reservations." And this fellow, VJ, was very good, and he said, "Let me take care of it for you. What days do you want? What times do you want?" And we put it down on a piece of paper. We were munching on our lunch. By the way, on the Reuben sandwich, there was one thin slice of corned beef, probably the strangest corned beef I've ever had. We could have taken the Star home, or we would have had to stay in Lisbon or someplace else in Spain for another week. And we didn't want to stay away for another week. That was honestly a mistake. The cruise from Barcelona back to Miami was supposed to have a stop in Lisbon, Cadiz, Portugal, and then in the Azores. Before we started the trip, Norwegian canceled Lisbon. We wanted to visit Lisbon again, and they provided us no compensation for cutting Lisbon out of the itinerary. Cadiz was very nice. We visited a family-owned winery about 30 miles inland, where they made us a nice lunch, and we actually cooked it with their instructions, sampled their wine and brandy, brought some of it back. And the Azores was, we've been to the Azores. People who took the long tours on the bus to go out to the lake and see this wonderful lake in the mountains. It rained. Luckily, we stayed in the port. We had a good time in the port, got back on the ship, and the ship leaves. Oh, a couple of people didn't make the ship. I don't know what they were doing, but they didn't get on, and maybe that was good. So we get out of the port first night. We have a bad history of when a cruise ship changes captains. The captain changed. The last time the captain changed was in the Tasman Sea in Tasmania, and when they changed captains, the new guy gets on the PA about an hour out of the port and says, hey, we've been ordered by the New Zealand Coast Guard to go pick up a German sailor whose sailboat has been disabled for the last 3 days. So we did that. It was interesting and exciting. Didn't cause much of a delay in the cruise. But this time, the new captain doesn't come on the speakers. And at 2 a.m., we hear this announcement, Code Oscar, Code Oscar. The next day, we figured out what that meant. That meant man overboard. Yep. Someone jumped the ship. And for 10 hours, between 2 a.m. and noon the next day, the ship sailed in circles around the area where the guy jumped off the ship. Apparently, 20 people a year die in suicide off ships. I didn't realize that. But the Norwegian Jewel was out of the dry dock. They put 3,500 routers in to improve the internet signal in the cabins and the hallways, which was nice. Unfortunately, they left the software from 2015 to get on the internet. So to get on the internet, they had a line of about 30, 35 people with only one server, one guy who knew what he was doing. At one point, I wanted to print something out, and they had a printer there that you could use, but the instructions on the printer didn't have any relation to the reality of what you had to do to get on the printer and print a page out. That was disappointing. The Brazilian restaurant on the Jewel was absolutely fantastic. The food was phenomenal. The French restaurant was so good we ate there twice. The other specialty restaurants I'm not going to talk about. The food in the main dining room was only fair. From a village's standard, if you know what type of food they serve at the country clubs, the average country club, that was the dining room. The dining room was called the Tsar's Palace, and it was a gigantic room decorated as if it was a Tsar's palace. It was gorgeous. The men's room didn't say men on it. It said Tsar. And then it had a picture of a Tsar, and the women's room had a picture of a Tsarina with a crown and nice restaurants. The self-service garden cafe or food court was always crowded and difficult to get a table at. The biggest problem, and I'll talk only briefly about it, for us, which was the killer, was the first morning we get up, try to take a shower. There's absolutely no hot water. We complain about it. Second day, we have no water until 9 a.m., and then it was only very hot or very cold. Third day, we have either very hot water or very cold water, nothing in between. Fourth day, they replaced the regulator unit, and that didn't fix the problem. And then they tell me that they have to turn off the water to 25 cabins to fix the plumbing so that we can have a moderate temperature water, which was almost unbelievable. But they did that, and after they did that, we had hot water. Oh, yeah. When we complained about it, I asked for a different cabin, and the people at the customer service desk said, oh, no, we don't have any cabins. We can't upgrade you. Nothing available. Sold out, which I thought was strange for a first voyage after a dry dock. I tried to buy some of the Haven class suites, but they had a bidding process that was a little bit insane, and I was unsuccessful in buying that upgrade. So I figured those cabins were available. Not the manager of this customer service, but the person directly under him, finally offered us an interior cabin to shower in. We would have to walk from the port side of the ship to the starboard side of the ship to take the shower. We did that for one day. We were very unhappy. And then they gave us $500 shipboard credit. Whoop-de-doo. Anyway, the seas were relatively calm. The passage from east to west was okay. I took a tour of the ship, the engine control room, not the engine room, and I was surprised about how many cameras there were. They had great 4K cameras looking in every elevator. The elevators were a little bit crowded, but not too bad. They actually took us onto the bridge. We didn't meet with the captain, and this was after the day after the Code Oscar. The captain later was unwilling to say very much about what happened since the family was still on board. We left the search area when the Portuguese Coast Guard arrived. There were 3 search planes and a couple of other cargo ships that were searching in the same area. I don't believe the guy was found. We get to Miami, we get off, and then we take a cab to the Miami airport, and we rented an Enterprise rent-a-car, drove it back to Leesburg in about 5.5 hours, turned it in, and it cost us only $70 plus tolls and gas to get back from Miami, which was great. And if anyone has any questions, you know how to contact me, Mike@rothvoice.com. Now let's listen to a short Alzheimer's tip from Dr. Craig Curtis.
Dr. Curtis, can you give our listeners a tip on keeping their brain healthy?
Absolutely. My favorite tip involves a change in eating patterns, but it's not a drastic change. It's simply increasing the amount of fresh fruits and vegetables, fish, other white meats, and lowering the amounts of red meat, sweets and sugars, and also carbohydrates. It's essentially following a Mediterranean-type diet plan.
With over 20 years of experience studying brain health, Dr. Curtis's goal is to educate the Villages community on how to live a longer, healthier life. To learn more, visit his website, craigcurtismd.com, or call 352-500-5252 to attend a free seminar.
Thank you, Dr. Curtis. Listeners, I'm thrilled to share with you this podcast, which is my passion project to bring knowledge, inspiration, and things you need to know about Villages and the people living here. Be sure to hit the follow button to get the newest episode each week. Or you can hit the purple supporter box. Even a small donation of $3 to $10 a month makes a big difference. And you can cancel your subscription at any time. Your support means the world to us. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep those headphones on.
Remember, our next episode will be released next Friday at 9 a.m. Should you want to become a major supporter of the show or have questions, please contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. This is a shout-out for supporters, Tweet Coleman, Ed Williams, Dwayne Romick, Paul Sorgan, and Dr. Craig Curtis at K2 in the Villages. We will be hearing more from Dr. Curtis with short Alzheimer's tips each week. If you know someone who should be on the show, contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. The way our show grows is with your help. Text your friends about this show. If you enjoyed listening, or just tell your friends about the show. We thank everyone for listening. The content of the show is copyrighted by Roth Voice 2025, all rights reserved.